Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is multifamily investor, fellow podcast host, and founder of Life Bridge Capital, Whitney Sewell. Now, Whitney got his start way back in 2009 and has since been involved in hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions. Life Bridge Capital was founded out of a love for structure and discipline, and a unique interest in real estate and a desire to help others create passive income that would support and bless their families. Additionally, through Whitney's nonprofit, LifeBridge Foundation, he has made a commitment to funnel 50% of the profits from his real estate endeavors to support adoptions and change the lives of orphans across the world. And so with that, guys, it's my honor to welcome my guest for today's show, Whitney Sewell. Whitney, how you doing, my friend?
I am excellent, Kevin. Honored to be on your show.
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. Good catching up. I know before we started recording here, we're just kind of, shooting it back and forth a little bit over the last couple of years. It's been a weird couple of years that we've gone through, and it sounds like life and business and everything's going well on your side of things. And so it's always good to hear, my friend. And so what I'd love to do, Whitney, for those that aren't familiar with you, don't know, who you are, your background, your story, maybe just take a few minutes. I'll pass it back to you and tell us a little bit about yourself and ultimately how you started on your real estate journey.
Of course. I'm honored to do that, Kevin. And I will share, 2009, a lot was happening. I'll go back just a little bit further than that so you can, the listeners can understand a little more about my story. But I say started in March of 2001. I joined the military that month. I just thought it was the right thing to do. I just wanted to serve, right? And so I was 17 years old. And again, that was March. Well, I had no idea that in September, obviously our country, our nation would be attacked, right? And that changed everything for me moving forward. And so found myself, just a couple years later, spending a year of my life in Iraq. Never imagined being there, but toting around a machine gun, praying every day I get to go home. Unfortunately, not everyone in my squad made it home. And so that obviously, it's just eye-opening, right, for a young man. And you learn a lot the hard way. But, the military taught me to have a never give up mentality. And I contribute, that to the military. But I'm so thankful, so fortunate to have made it home, of course. And but the military, after coming home, I didn't have that thing, what most people call a diploma, that piece of paper from a college or anything like that. And so I almost felt helpless, right? Like, what can I do? All I have is military experience. And so policing seemed like a great transition. I went into, I applied with Kentucky State Police. There were 1,200 applicants, I think, for 5 positions. I was blessed to have one of them. Loved working the road. However, my wife and I just passed each other in the hallway the first whole year of marriage. And, and I was making like 25 to 30,000 a year, and working the worst schedule you can imagine. And it was just going to be difficult for us to see a path long-term, right? For me doing that. I did enjoy the road. I enjoyed the uniform, the structure, the discipline, the service, loved being a first responder. However, I could see quickly that it just wasn't what was best, right? We wanted my wife to be able to stay at home when we had children. And man, on 30,000 or so, it was going to be very difficult. Very difficult. And so I said, you know what? I've got to figure out some way to increase our income. And this was 2008-ish timeframe now. And again, I was making such little money. I mean, a crash or what everybody talks about, it didn't affect me. I didn't even know that happened. So I was just focused on working the road as a police officer and trying to be home sometimes. But as I was seeking out ways to supplement our income, well, I learned about this thing called real estate. Had no idea that so many people had built wealth by having some rentals, and I thought, okay, if millions of people can build passive income in some way in real estate and wealth, I can do something, right? I can do something that's going to supplement our income, thinking that I would stay in policing. So I bought 2 triplexes. And made a ton of mistakes. Learned a lot the hard way. I say the apartments, like that term now. My wife and I both just cringe a little bit, from that time. We were newly married, remodeling a house we were living in. I was working the worst schedule, trying to self-manage these parts. It was quite chaos, but we learned a lot, to say the least. And thankfully, we didn't stop there. But I soon became a federal agent that moved us to Virginia, where we live now. Mm-hmm. I got a better schedule, better income, better benefits, those things. And believe it or not, Kevin, I sold those triplexes. Then I became a professional horse trainer. And so I I was
Wow.
training horses, and I know it's like from way out.
I didn't know that part.
You didn't know that. So I'm glad I shared that. So I did. It was a passion of mine since I was a little boy. And so I started a business, and I've been riding quite a bit, but since I was little, but not at this level. And it became like, man, it was a second job. I mean, it was like working two full-time jobs. As a federal agent during the day, I would get home, load the horses up, go to the arena. I'd be in the arena giving lessons and training horses till midnight most nights. But I started doing clinics all over the country. I started teaching lots of people horsemanship skills. I love doing that. And I started selling horses for more money than I ever imagined. And you'll see where I'm going in just a moment. But just so you can kind of see that, man, this was a passion I had since I was little, right? And it was coming to life. I was making money doing that and enjoying it. However, you know what? I was missing everything with my wife and kids, once again, right? I could see once again, okay, as much as I'm enjoying this is still not what is best. I was still dabbling in real estate a little bit, but not very seriously. I owned a 15 unit with a friend and with a partner, but I knew that real estate could always build wealth. But man, this horse thing was still keeping me so busy. I still couldn't focus on it, right? My wife and I were on the beach one fall, and we were just walking in what I call having thinking time, and praying and just thinking, is what we're doing right now going to get us where we want to go? Like 5 years from now, are we going to keep doing this? And it was obvious to both of us then that it wasn't. And so we got home. This was like September. We got home and we sold the farm. We sold everything related to that business. Between Christmas and New Year's, we were moving out of that farm. And so I'll never forget my wife and I pulling out of the driveway the last time and just bawling, crying and thinking, man, are we making a mistake? Because everybody already told us how big a mistake we were making.
Yeah.
Like you all something must be wrong here, right? You all have an amazing farmhouse, amazing job, right? Federal job. Everybody dreams of that, typically, especially in law enforcement. And it's like, there's got to be something wrong, and we were, and at that moment you're thinking, man, am I doing something wrong? Is this the right decision?
Sure.
But so we moved into a house in town, and not the best area of town, built an office in the basement. I knew commercial real estate could build wealth. I knew that I was going to be committed to that. And to do that, I had to cut the horse training off. I had to just burn that bridge completely. Maybe not forever, right? But at least for a time, so I could be completely focused. And then over the next 3 years, man, that's where our podcast was born. That's where, when I met my business partner, hired a mentor. I mean, I started traveling as hard as I could go to every conference I could go to and just networking as hard as I could. It was a very difficult time. My wife was still doing everything in the home without me. Ultimately, I would record 12 to 15 interviews back to back to back a couple of days a month to keep the daily show going. It was madness, to say the least. But our big mission was the adoption front, or the goal, like you talked about. And we have 3 children through adoption, and Samuel, Elijah, and Eden Joy. And oftentimes people can't adopt, though, because of the burden, the expense, unfortunately, 40 to 60 grand to bring a child home. And so we started a foundation that would help these families get past that financial burden and commit to bringing their child home through adoption. But because of that, I mean, we have about 350 million, almost 350 million in assets under management now. Colorado, Idaho, a few development projects happening, but mostly value add, like mid to late 70s vintage type value add deals.
I appreciate you sharing all that, and wow, really, really full circle there, right? And what I love to do, there's a lot to pick apart there, but where I'd like to go with this next question would be, the importance of really having a clear vision and a purpose, prior to building your company, right? Like you and your wife, you had that conversation while on the beach. You came back and quit the farm cold turkey, I guess you could say. But then aside from the vision for your family and spending, having more flexibility and spending more time with your wife and your children and being more present, that vision also, took the form of helping orphans across the country, right? Helping folks that can't afford the adoption process and helping kids find their forever homes. And so just maybe if you would, talk to me about how that really helped guide you down this path.
Yes, no doubt about it. I'm glad you asked, because it's played such a big role in what success we've experienced so far. And I would say, during those first few years, it was everything we could do to keep it going. I mean, there were numerous mornings. So we had to start, we woke up really early, my wife and I are early risers. And at that time at like 5 to 7 in the morning, that was really the only time my wife and I could connect during the entire week, typically. But that's a time, it was so important. But there were numerous mornings where I was like, you know what? I don't know if we can afford to do the podcast next month. I don't know if we can we didn't know where the capital was going to come from. The Lord would provide just time and time again. Different things would happen. But, that mission, that why, I love sharing that because it wasn't just something I was passionate about. My wife couldn't care less about real estate specifically. I could have started any business, and she would have supported me. I'm confident. But man, that mission, that why, she's behind 110%.
Yeah.
Right. And she's motivated about that. She's motivated about, us pursuing that why and that mission and seeing that happen through the real estate business. But also my children, obviously, 3 that are adopted. I mean, they're directly connected to that cause and mission. And that helps them to stay motivated as well. And to see why dad is working all these hours. Right. Mm-hmm. But even past that, once our business started growing, I see investors that want to partner with us because of that mission, right? And it's neat to see also investors, it doesn't affect their returns, even though, they love knowing they're playing a role in that. But it's neat to see when they do want to invest or donate, right, mm-hmm. to that cause and to the foundation directly. It's really neat to see that desire. And also, our team is growing a lot now, and numerous team members have come to us because of that cause as well. They know they're not like working for the foundation, but that just shows them something about our organization, the way we want to give back, the way we care about people. And that'd be something that many of them will mention, during an interview or even after we've hired them, that they love being a part of that cause and that why, that mission.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like you said, I mean, either way, whether it's your investors or these, your employees that you're hiring that aren't necessarily working for the foundation, but they still have a very much an indirect role in participating and everything that you have going on. So that's a beautiful thing. I love it. And one of the interesting points that I think you hit on, you didn't say it in this exact way, but you mentioned that your wife, like, she didn't have a passion for real estate. It could have been any business. And I think that's important to make note of, is that, at the end of the day, really at the end of the day, now I love doing deals, right? I love structuring transactions and making it a win-win. I love the hunt, finding that niche opportunity, that needle in the haystack deal. But at the end of the day, real estate's just a vehicle, right? And that vehicle could take many different forms. Again, i.e. your wife stating, like, it could have been any business, right? It just, real estate happened to be the one that you guys really set your sights on. And so I don't know if you feel that same way as well, as far as like it being a vehicle that can take you guys, drive you and your team to where you need to be and to fulfill this mission that you've created.
For sure. No doubt about it. We could have focused on a different business and hopefully been successful, or my wife would have been behind that. But no, we knew real estate could build wealth, and that's why we focused there.
Oh, well, good deal. So these last few years have been, quite interesting to say the least. And obviously, being in the multifamily sector, multifamily, mobile home parks, and self-storage have absolutely kicked butt, through these last 2 years during the pandemic. We all kind of lost some sleep, probably April. I guess going into April and then into May of 2020, just wondering if everyone was going to pay their rent or they weren't, what was going to happen there. And everything really, really did work out for the best, at least in our asset classes. There's a few others that had some challenges. And so with that being said, there were still a lot of changes I saw come forth, not just in our business, but other sponsors and syndicators, across the board, of just really making 2020 and 2021 years for change, taking the time to maybe restructure their organization, to maybe focus on putting some systems and processes in place that they had been delaying for so much time, aside from maybe spending more time with their family and things like that, right? Like I just feel like 20 and 21 were really moments of reflection, years of reflection. So with that being said, I mean, were there any massive changes, strategic changes that you guys made inside your organization that came as a benefit, as a result of COVID and again, the last 2 years that we dealt with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say early on COVID, yes, like you said, into March, we were like, oh no, we just closed on I think 216 unit project, and we were like, oh, what's going to happen? Right. Our lender said we were like the last loan that they were putting through.
Oh boy.
And so obviously we're so thankful. But at that moment we were all wondering, right? But it turned out to be an amazing year,
Mhm.
and even the next year, many deals, and, we kept doing deals. And I would say, we have more of a slowdown right now as far as deal flow, just with the unknown, right, of interest rates and inflation, different things that are happening, that are maybe slowing our deal flow down a little bit. But we're turned as more internal at the moment. Our guys are, we're still growing our acquisition team. We're still underwriting deals, looking for deals. But we know that as we grow, we have to grow our team, right? Our assets can't keep growing and us continuing to stay the size and the manpower that we have. So we put a big focus on hiring recently. We started investor relations position. We just hired for that role. We started acquisitions lead role. We're probably going to hire 2 people through that process, as well. And then we're going to hire some more marketing people in the very near future. We hired 1 or 2 more people in the Philippines as well. We have about a dozen full-time people there.
Mhm.
And so, and actually there's 2 more key people that are most likely going to come on our team. And I would say that I think every one of these people, maybe except for one, have more experience in commercial real estate than almost the rest of our team combined. so,
Yeah.
so I'm excited about that. And I share that to say, just like what I shared earlier, even sharing about our mission and our why and those things, that's a big reason some of these people want to work for us.
Yep.
Right. It's like I interviewed a couple of these people, and when I was interviewing them, my thoughts were, you're never working for me. Like you're just not, but they are. And so I'm thankful. But we've turned internal now, and we're focusing on
Yep.
just even team communication, the type of meetings we're having, and just getting better, at processes internally, even having a thing called a pipeline meeting, right? Well, how does this work? This pipeline, right? Well, what happens, one thing after the next to make this thing happen? Who needs to be involved in that process?
Mhm.
And so just improving internally consistently and being in that mindset.
Now, is your entire team virtual?
They're all over the place, country. Obviously we have numerous in the States, and we have numerous in the Philippines also.
Mhm. How have you guys been able to manage the time difference in the Philippines? Do they simply work, an Eastern Standard time frame, or how does that work?
Yeah, great question. Ultimately, most of them do not. Most of them work on a normal schedule there, so it's like 12 hours difference most of the year. But most of them are around marketing, podcasts. We're producing other people's
Okay.
podcasts now as well, or they are. And so it doesn't really matter, the time of day for most of their things. One person specifically will work some Eastern time, hours, just because of the communication piece with guests and whatnot. But then, even, we have a couple people, 4 people now in the West. So like Colorado or further. And so, that can be a hindrance sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Or it's like, when are we talking about things or having those meetings? But it's still been very manageable as far as when we get in a routine, it's usually like a weekly cadence for most of those meetings, or every other week for some of them. It's just get it on the schedule. Me being Eastern time, I may start at a meeting at 10 while somebody else is at 7,
Mhm.
or 8.
Yep. So let's talk about interest rates, and it's not an if, it's a win, right? Like we've already seen, darn near 200 basis points increase over the past 3 or 4 months, and we know that there's more on the horizon. And so, I know that you do a lot of value add deals. We do as well. And so how are you guys navigating that risk of, future interest rate increases, not knowing what the end actually looks like? And so with that being said, more context to that question would be, a lot of times when we do value add deals, we're putting some type of bridge product, or maybe it's not technically a bridge loan, but it's still what would be not a permanent long-term loan. It might be from a local bank or regional bank, but it's acting as a bridge in one capacity or another. But ultimately, we're looking to put some type of perm debt in place once we get that property stabilized. So how are you guys mitigating those potential risks?
Yeah, great question. And I would say at the moment, we're much less likely to have any kind of bridge debt.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be so focused on fixed rate long-term debt. And so that we may, raise more, which may lower returns a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we can do the CapEx through a raise so we can focus on, we do have fixed rate long-term debt. We can count on this type of debt for, let's say it's 8 or 10 years versus counting on having to refi out. We just don't want to have to count on having to refi, in 2 years or whatever it may be.
Okay. No, fantastic. And I know that you've also ventured down the path of new developments. I know we were chatting about it a little bit before we started recording here, and which is exciting. It's seemingly it's been even harder and harder to find decent quality used inventory on the marketplace, especially when you start looking back, vintage, 70s and 80s construction. There's lots of additional skeletons that come along with those older vintage type product, and the cap rates have gotten so compressed, even in that C grade product, that I know a lot of folks started really opening their eyes up towards new development opportunities. And so maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing, what those new development opportunities look like for you and your team, and ultimately what made you go down that path.
Yes. And so I would say development is a different animal, right, than value add multifamily. However, it's all about our team. It's all about, I would say I'm not the development expert. And some people may, think that's surprising, right, that I would say that. Well, but I would also say that everybody we're hiring is better at their thing that I'm hiring them for, than I am. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to be. That's why we're growing, one, really quickly, right, is we're improving our team and the skill sets that we have. Well, and development is just like that. So we purchased a deal from a developer a couple of years ago and built a relationship, right? He started another project and ultimately we bought it from him or put it under contract a year or more than a year before it was even going to be finished, right? And that was very market specific as well. We wouldn't develop just anywhere. However, in Boise, with the growth that we expected there, we wanted to jump in that market even on the development side. But we partnered with a developer who had been developing in that market for 20 years, right? And we have another relationship there with a developer, where we didn't just put it under contract and say fund it. We're actually bought the land and they're going to be a partner in the deal, as well. But it's through those relationships and it's finding the expertise and bringing it in house. It's not me going and taking a course on development or trying to study with somebody that's doing development and really playing with investor capital that way, right? Like I want the expertise on the team. I want the experience on the team,
Absolutely.
Of people that have been there and done it for many, many years in that market.
Yeah, I mean, not one person could be an expert at every aspect of the business, and so just as you had mentioned, like the objective here is to hire those that are smarter than I in whatever respective roles that they're going to be in, right?
That's right.
So, well, fantastic. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit, Whitney, and you've been at this now a number of years, and being that you've been involved in a litany of different transactions, not one is the same as the next. I mean, they all have got their unique challenges associated with them, and there always ends up being the one that just really sticks out as a sore thumb, the one that caused the most sleepless nights, the one that caused the most stress, whatever. Just it had a mountain of challenges associated with it. When I say all those things, what's that one deal that comes to mind? What was it? What were the challenges associated with it? And ultimately, what was the outcome?
Yeah, I would say and I always talk about those triplexes a lot because there were many hardships around those triplexes. But I'll talk about larger syndications for this conversation anyway, or either one if you want to know. Happy to talk about either. But our first syndication together, or my business partner and I, ultimately, since we closed, it's been a great deal. We're most likely going to sell it soon, and it's going to more than surpass returns for investors in 3 years versus 5, and so it's going to do very well. However, it has had some headaches along the way. Ultimately there were like CapEx projects that we weren't sure how we were going to fund. Right. Like there were things that needed to be done. There was some foundation issues. There were some leaks. There were like numerous things, some roofing, some siding, driveway. Like there were numerous things that maybe we didn't expect were going to cost as much as they did, or were going to, from the very beginning. Right. And so ultimately we funded it personally. And so my business partner and I, and so we did not want to miss distributions. We didn't want to, ask investors to fund it. It wasn't like a major thing, but ultimately we should have raised some more money for CapEx,
okay,
right? For that deal from the very beginning. Learned a lesson there. Thankfully, it wasn't like this, it didn't kill the deal, right? It's still going to be a great deal for investors. But, my business partner and I just felt the need to, hey, you know what? It's our mistake. If we can, we're going to fund it ourselves and make it happen.
Yeah. So the lesson learned there is basically you guys just, you were a little shy on your CapEx budget. And what was that a direct result of? Was it just, you missed a few inspections on a few items, or, the cost of material and labor, significantly increased, or a combination of all the above? Like, what happens the next time around to avoid that same potential mistake?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing around that was like foundation issues that cost more than we expected.
Mm-hmm.
And we should have had more quotes, right? Or talked to more people about the foundation specifically, or maybe got another inspection or requested an extension just about that issue, right? So we could better understand, hey, what is going to be entailed to fix this, right? What are we going to have to do? What's it going to cost? And get some more accurate numbers around that, or more hard numbers, right? And not be rushed at all in making a decision about that dollar number.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And then again, switching, I guess maybe it's a sub question of that original question would be any deals that you've ever walked away from. Now I know I'm going to preface this question by saying that we never ever tie up anything with the intent of not closing on it, right? If we're going to enter into due diligence to put money in escrow, then hopefully we've done to the best of our ability as much homework as possible before we get to that point in time. And there's a high success rate of closing. However, these things, things happen, things pop out, skeletons show themselves, that were unexpected. And has there ever been a deal that, for one reason or another, ultimately you guys were excited about, then changed gears on just for XYZ reasons? Something surfaced that was just detrimental to the deal actually making sense anymore. Was there anything like that?
Yeah. So thankfully, I think every project we put under contract, we have closed.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the one that comes to mind is we had a deal we were supposed to close in December. And we were closing 2 deals in December. We were 1031ing out of one we sold into these 2 projects. Like we had it all planned out, right? And then guess what? It was like a week to 2 weeks before we were going to close, one of the buildings caught fire.
Oh boy.
And so I talk about a mess. Unfortunately, there were some injuries and thankfully before we closed on it, right? I mean, this happened or we hadn't closed on it yet. But it turned into obviously a massive process of figuring out what to do, like who's responsible for what here and dealing with insurance, all those things. We are going to close like within the next week to 2 weeks, but it's taken many months, to figure that out, right? To talk to their insurance and who's responsible for what and how do we handle this? Who's going to pay for what? We are still going to close, but it hasn't been easy and it really delayed that. We were not willing to just jump in or move forward the way we had already planned, of course, because I think it was like 6 units, were affected or going to have to be reconstructed, completely. So, and so that, the capital to come in to do that was important. We knew where that was going to come from.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that. Again, just goes to show that not one deal always goes as planned. They've always got their unique challenges associated with them. Some bigger than others, right? Well, that's exciting, my friend. You got a lot of great things going on. Really excited to kind of watch you continue to grow as you build your team out. And again, just bring on those that are smarter than you as an individual, right? Like those that have expertise in different skill sets and can, fill those voids within your company to help you guys get to the next level. Just super excited to continue watching your growth. And, for those, Whitney, that want to learn more about you and your business, also you can, feel free to drop info regarding the podcast, how they can, get access to that and all the great resources that you offer. Where's the best place to find you?
lifebridgecapital.com. They can email me, Whitney at lifebridgecapital.com. You can call or text 540-585-4338. Kevin alluded to the podcast, Real Estate Syndication Show, where we interview amazing experts in this business, just like Kevin.
I'm blown away that you've had as many guests. So he does a daily show, which if you guys can imagine keeping up with that, you've been doing it now for how long, Whitney? Was it
over 1,300 days?
Oh my gosh. So yeah. Wow. That's, so what, 3.5 years? Is that going on? Yeah. Something like that. That's absolutely incredible, my friend. That's absolutely incredible. Kudos to you. I don't know how you do. You obviously find time today to do it. You're very disciplined with your schedule, which is absolutely amazing. So with that, my friend, it's been awesome having you back on the show. And again, look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you. You as well, Kevin.
Alrighty, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Butt, wishing you huge success. Take care.